Hey, we're cooking with gas here on the Jewcast.
Okay, careful using a phrase like that.
This trial is a travesty. It's a travesty of a mockery, of a sham, of a mockery, of a travesty, of two mockeries of a sham.
Tradition!
Oh, shut up, Carl! Shut your goddamn Jew mouth! You people are why there's war in the Middle East!
Gekackt von Jan.
Nebbig.
Verpoepoepoe.
Vermischt.
Verkackt.
Vertutzt.
Verstonken.
Farted.
Exactly.
You're what Grammy Hall would call a real Jew.
Here we go. Do you know what episode this is?
Is it 69?
69, dude!
69! I made it.
Welcome to American Jew, everybody. We're doing it. We're excited.
69. We're doing some oral talking.
Yes, we are cunning linguists and master debaters here on the American Jew podcast.
Wow, what a pun-friendly start of the show.
I'm a fan. Craziness all over the world. It's like an anti-Semitism Olympics out there.
Anti-Semitism's running rampant, so some guy got stabbed in the head in Nevada. That was some recent anti-Semitic news. Unfortunately, I guess somebody asked him for money outside a bar and then started doing Hail Hitler and then stabbed him in the head with a knife.
Yeah, very...
Not a good way to get money from somebody.
Yeah, certainly not. The saddest part is that stories like this are not getting as much media attention as I think they deserve. There's been so much anti-Semitism in this year alone that hasn't really gotten a lot of attention from the newspapers. I haven't seen a lot of these stories unless I see other people posting them.
Okay, I mean, I guess with my regular Googling of the news of Jews, I see them. They come up, unfortunately. But, there's at the University of Florida, they're debating about there's a petition going around because one of they have student organization and the head of it is being anti-Semitic, anti-Israel. They want to get rid of him. Winona Ryder just came out and said Mel Gibson referred to her as an oven dodger.
Oh, that's why.
Well-known anti-Semite Mel Gibson.
Yes, Mel Gibson saw all the anti-Semitism happening in the world, and he was like, "Hold my pitchfork. I got to get in this."
Yeah, I mean, I think this happened kind of it wasn't recent. But for some reason, it's just coming out now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I feel like, this was in the past where, he said this to her. But she's talking about this now. Roger Waters has been accused of some anti-Semitic comments from Pink Floyd. I mean, everything. There's just so much anti-Semitism all over the world. It's running rampant. And unfortunately, I don't think it's going to get better. And what I think is about to happen if Israel goes along with the annexation is it's just going to get worse. And I don't think Netanyahu is taking that into consideration that, it's just going to spark more anti-Semitism. Us Jews are having a hard enough time dealing with these dumb anti-Semitic tropes that people for some reason believe in. And then we also have to deal with people, being upset with us because of our treatment for the Palestinian people. And if we go into the West Bank and we annex, a third of it, the area by the Jordan Valley, already a lot of European states are saying that there's going to be problems. They're going to have problems with Israel. They're going to recognize Palestine as a state. There's a thing going on in Belgium right now to try to recognize Palestine as a state. Not that I'm against recognizing Palestine as a state, but we just want to do it the right way. It's a horrible move for Israel to go in. I mean, everything that's happening right now in the world with Black Lives Matter movement, treating people, as equals, and then Israel is kind of oppressing the Palestinian people as they have. I mean, I'm going to say it, Palestinian lives matter.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that it's so strange that, I mean, we've talked about this a lot. It's so strange that the Jewish people have been oppressed and marginalized for almost our whole history, and we finally have a piece of land of our own, and we turn around and oppress and do the same thing to the people that are there.
It is. It's absolutely crazy, and it's crazy that this is still an option that might move forward, come July 1st. Hopefully it won't. Hopefully they won't do this. I mean, that should just let's strive for peace in the Middle East. Let's strive for not hurting, our Palestinian brothers, which I believe they are. They're our brothers and our sisters, even if have a different religion and I feel like this is just going to spread more hatred. It's going to harm Palestinian people. I don't think anything good can come from this annexation, and I for one, am against it. From what I've been reading, a lot of American Jews are against it. Specifically, a lot of liberal Jews are against it. And, hopefully Israel could kind of join the conversation that's going on for, equal rights for people.
Yeah, but I think also, it is hard to – I feel like a lot of this issue is painted by the types of people who say that if you are anti-Israel, that you're anti-Semitic, or that you're if you're pro-Palestinian people, you're anti-Semitic and you're anti-Israel. Like, a lot of these ideas can coexist. I don't understand why, being for humanity and for unity and for, good automatically pits you as a nemesis of the side that wants to divide and conquer.
Absolutely. That's a lot of mishigas, as they would say. We talked a lot about this the first year of the podcast, about how you can be anti-Israel and not be anti-Semitic. And to be honest, the people who are kind of pushing that narrative that if you're anti-Israel, you're anti-Semitic is Israel.
Yeah.
Are Zionists. So I think, we are not Zionists. We, are all for the state of Israel, but also for a Palestinian state. We'd like a two-state solution. We'd like for not this group of people to be feeling so oppressed and so slighted by Israel and by the Jewish people.
Yeah, and
we're coming out. We're standing with our black brothers and sisters. We both have common enemies, white supremacists. We're joining the fight. Yet, why aren't we joining the fight, more of us, to stand with Palestinians?
I'm with you on that, and that's why I think it's so weird that it's such it really is a simple issue that people have complicated for the simple, for the reason of trying to divide.
I don't know. Yes, people. There's so much division in the world. We've been talking about this the last couple weeks. It's like we just can't get it as human beings. Like, we keep on looking for more ways to divide instead of more ways to come together. And honestly, I think that a lot of it is happening because it's like we don't even realize we're being pitted against one another. So we're distracted from things that are really going on.
Yeah. And, it's really crazy, the fact that there is so much unrest in our country right now, that there are black men being hung in public areas and having those things being deemed a suicide almost immediately, which is ridiculous.
Despicable.
And the recent rash of anti-Semitic acts where they've, destroyed fountains and Holocaust memorials and desecrated the front.
People in the head.
Yeah, stabbing people in the head, but also desecrating a lot of temples and stuff and spouting a lot of the anti-Semitic slurs. It's really...
And, people are... Just for COVID, too, the Tel Aviv University has a think tank that said a lot of people are still blaming the Jews in Israel for the pandemic.
Yeah. The whole pandemic thing is crazy, too, because there's just no real leadership in our country telling us what we should – there's people telling you different things from every side. So, whatever you want to believe, you can find somebody that has that opinion. So you can believe whatever you want.
It's absolutely just so crazy how much anti-Semitism is, going on, how it's not such a big part of the conversation, how people don't realize it. And I feel like just because Jews are maybe successful, many Jews have more money, there are a lot of Jews of power, it doesn't mean that, the hatred isn't real, it isn't out there, and it isn't affecting, all Jews.
All these conspiracy theories about George Soros funding parts of the Black Lives Matter movement to loot and destroy things and be sort of standing with those white supremacists is insane to me. You've heard that, right?
There's just so many crazy theories. I don't know where these people get it from. It's they're so insane. It's crazy that people believe them.
Yeah, people believe this shit, and you wouldn't even be able to get a TV show with this premise on the air.
No, they're saying, of course, also that the Israel are the ones that train the cops to put their knees on George Floyd the way that he did, and they're somewhat responsible. The Israeli soldiers, that it's just anything that can be, it's like anything bad that happens, people look for a reason and a way to blame the Jews.
Yeah, we seem to get the short end of the stick.
It's absolutely insane. I'm actually looking at a cartoon right now that shows an Israeli soldier and American policeman supporting each other as they kneel on a Palestinian and a black man choking them.
Yeah, this type of propaganda that's out there is just, like I said, there's all these different theories, conspiracy theories, and opinions out there that whatever you want to believe, you can find somebody that has talked about it. You know, you can find.
Oh, no, and you know, you don't even have to find them. They're coming looking for you, like we experienced last week. You know, every week I post a picture on our American Jew Instagram, American Jew Podcast. If you're not following us, we would appreciate the follow. And I do it on my own Instagram, too, to promote the podcast. And we had some loony nut job who, again, started saying Jews are responsible for slavery. This is another anti-Semitic trope that has shown to be false, that Jews were primarily responsible for the slave trade. That it's not true. It's been debunked, but people still want to believe it. And this guy just went crazy with all this insane anti-Semitic propaganda all over my Instagram. I definitely probably encouraged him a little too much with responding. But I think what was most appalling to me was I went to his page, totally filled with anti-Semitic hate, memes, and just horrible, ugly stuff, and I reported it to Instagram, and Instagram's like, no, this isn't against our policies for hate speech. This is okay.
Yeah, well.
Unbelievable, Instagram.
It's kind of amazing to me, though, that almost all of those white supremacist idiots online are often, their profiles, they're basically faceless people. They hide behind memes that somebody else wrote. They don't have any of their own ideas, which is really, it's like all those people that post things on Facebook saying, do your own research. And I cut and pasted this. I copied and pasted this from somebody else's page. But you should do your own research. Also, copy this.
I think this is also, this, I kind of am just reminded, people are blaming Jews for COVID. It's crazy. Of course, a lot of white supremacists are doing it. A lot of the ultra-conservative Christians are blaming Jews, especially ultra-Orthodox. They're saying they didn't really care enough about social distancing and, hygiene rules and all this. And then, it really makes me think about de Blasio and when he shut down and people really attacked him. But, the more I think about it, he was doing that for the Jews. He was doing that so people would stop, blaming the Jews when they have no reason to. It's almost like a precautionary measure. I see it more now as than him being, coming down on the Jews.
No. I agree with you that that's probably what his intention was, but he definitely bungled all of those. He fucked up every single time that happened. If you have to, like I said, I've said this previously, if you have to come out the following day to clarify what you said because you're getting hate mail, you didn't say it correctly the first time. Take some time and choose your words properly and make sure your original intent comes across the first time. If every time you have to clarify, there's something wrong with the messaging. You have to figure out a way to get the messaging consistent.
While I do agree with you, Jordan, I just think that we live in this time where it's just such a gotcha culture, where no matter what you say, somebody is looking for something to find wrong with it. No matter what you've done, people want to, bring it up years later, whatever. They don't care. If you do something, you've done something that someone doesn't agree with now, it's like they want to cancel you. They want to end you. Now, of course, it's a lot different. We're talking about Mel Gibson, spreading hate like that. Yeah, I think you should be canceled. One thing we talked about is, Walt Disney is known as a huge anti-Semite.
Yes.
He's known as an anti-Semite. He's known as helping spread anti-Semitic propaganda. Yet, people don't seem to have much of a problem with Disney. Jews go to Disney World. Jews show kids, Disney movies. Disney's still part of the life. I know you mentioned that you think it's too big. Disney, there's a lot. Disney owns Star Wars now. It owns Marvel. But, with it's okay to cancel a guy who's done something wrong so many years ago. What about a corporation like Disney, which was built from an anti-Semite?
Yeah, what about
same thing with Ford Motor?
Yeah, Ford Motor Company. They made he printed up and spread around the Elders of Zion.
Yes, he spread that around, and now similar themes are going on when people are blaming people of, the coronavirus, that we're doing this to, throw off the economies of the world so we could take control, so we could create a vaccine, so we can make money from it. Like, these are just kind of the same dumb anti-Semitic tropes just being regurgitated, and it's already known that the other assignment was just a hoax.
And, like you said, it's so complicated because everybody's really just waiting for a fight. Like, people post stuff online looking for people to argue with. You have all these threads that just go on forever where people that people that you thought you knew are attacking you for, the way that you are expressing opinions about this stuff. It is troubling to see, which,
Absolutely.
may be an interesting segue into our guest today.
Okay, yeah, we're very excited to have Danny Lobell on the show.
We've had him on already, but he's been pretty vocal about all of this anti-Semitism stuff online as well, and he's been stirring the pot. So let's get him on here so we can figure some of this shit out.
What's up, Danny?
Is my audio okay?
Yeah, you sound great.
Thank you.
That audio is okay, and it's the audio of Danny Lobell. We're so happy to have you back on the show, Danny. How's it going?
I've hit the big time. I'm back with the boys.
Yeah, finally. Well, we were talking about.
I'm proud of you guys. I just want to say that you guys are proud American Jews, as titled in the podcast, and you go out there every week and you do this thing, and I love it. I'm proud to know you both.
Oh, thank you. We're proud to know you too, Danny. I love what's going on with you on social media right now. You're going off, and I really am enjoying it.
Thank you. I just can't stay silent anymore. I realized something, and that is that I don't want to live under a communist Chinese regime where I'm afraid to speak up.
Yes, no one wants to live under that. We're happy. One of the great parts about living in America is having freedom of speech. Even if they try to stop us from saying what we want to say, or they don't want to hear what we want to say, we definitely do have something to say, being comedians and artists. So, what's going on, Danny?
Well, I'm just sitting on the patio right now. There's a slight breeze.
Very specific.
I don't know what to say to that.
Danny gives the most specific answers, that's for sure.
Yeah, I know. I meant more like, with you worrying about, us living in a communist regime and not being able to speak up, and, you are being afraid of, the anti-Semitism that's going on, throughout the world and not being paid enough attention to. I read that you're thinking about moving your family to Israel. I know you're also unhappy a little bit with the gotcha culture that's going on right now.
Well, these are all connected, so yes. Well, I guess I'll address them one at a time. Anti-Semitism is at an all-time recorded high in American history. That's more than during the rise of the Nazis when they filled Madison Square Garden with Nazis.
Wow.
I don't know if you guys are aware of that. You could look it up.
They were able to fill it with Nazis, but apparently the Knicks can't fill it these days.
Well,
Boom!
I was waiting for the line.
Randall coming in with the sports joke.
I can't believe Randall made the Knicks joke.
Me neither.
And Ferber, you're a huge Knicks fan.
I know. I'm a Knicks fan.
So that's
Sorry,
highly
Danny,
controversial.
didn't mean to interrupt.
Highly controversial thing to say. Yeah, we're at an all-time high. The attacks are happening daily and multiple in a day all over the country, everywhere. North, south, east, west, wherever there's Jews, we have anti-Semitism. Why it's, like being reported by me on your podcast and not by CNN or on the other side, Fox News,
right,
is very concerning to me. If you look at both sides of the political aisle, they have big platforms to report on this stuff. They're not using it. Frankly, I've lost faith in both the American political parties. Happened over time, but certainly was solidified. My family have been Democrats for generations. My father and grandfather have given more money to the Democratic Party than I would like to even think about. And you're not even supposed to say it anymore because they've demonized Jews for anything we do, good or bad. You give money to Democrats, oh, it's all about the Benjamins. You got Ilhan Omar accusing Jews of supporting the party that she gets paid by. So, this is what they've done. They've pushed people away. They pushed me away. And, I'm not a Trump supporter for various reasons. I think it's exhaustive to go into. But, I do acknowledge that he's been very good for Israel. And I call him like I see him. He's been very good for Israel. And I appreciate that. It's still.
But do you think he really cares about Israel? That just serves his own.
Don't care.
Agenda?
I don't care what he. I don't care. I don't begin to try and get into that psychology. I don't really care. I just.
So let me just interrupt you for a second, Danny, because I want to tie in some of the things that you just were talking about. Trump. One of the things he laid out this new policy for peace in the Middle East. With this annexation that's possible to be happening on July 1st. Me and Jordon were talking about this earlier.
He didn't do it.
He laid out a plan, the Trump administration.
No, that's coming from Bibi Netanyahu, with the cooperation of Jared Kushner, who's Jewish. My feeling is on Israel, this is where we got most of the Jews, right? This is where we go. This is like the only option. Like when things go down, you can go to Israel and hopefully be safe. So if the elected prime minister of Israel, who was elected by, and they went through it 3 times, so we know for sure, was elected by a majority of Jews in Israel, and he thinks this is the safest and best move for Israel, then I'm outraged that Chuck Schumer would say he knows better than the majority of Jews in Israel. So, if that is the safest move that Israel is expressing, I'm for it. I don't understand foreign policy. I'm a comedian who barely knows how to, run my day-to-day life. But I am a believer that the Jewish people are smart people. And in Israel, where they know what's really going on, if this is what they think is right, then I support it.
But wait, you say that you think it's right because Netanyahu's leading the charge and they got Netanyahu into office, but they didn't really get him into office. He kind of screwed up 3 times, then he kind of got a deal going on to do this a little bit, which it seems not really so much that he cares about doing it for the benefit of Israel, the Israeli people, but to me, so he wouldn't get in trouble with the charges that are going up against him. And and just to be clear, there is a Trump peace plan that his administration did put out, which would state that they Netanyahu is allowed to take this area in the West Bank. So hopefully that won't happen, but. I guess you're pro Netanyahu. You're arguing with Jordan's mom about it. We are anti-Netanyahu on the podcast. We're anti the annexation. And that's what I actually wanted to ask you, Danny. Don't you think that this annexation will spark more anti-Semitism throughout the world?
Personally, since you're asking me, and I understand that we disagree, and by the way, I know that it should be assumed, but it isn't assumed these days that it's okay to disagree. So I'm just going to say it. I respect the hell out of you guys. And I think, obviously your opinion as Jews is just as important as mine. So while I disagree with you, I completely support your right to disagree with me. And I don't think you're wrong. I do think you're wrong, but I don't think, what's the right way to put this? I don't know that either one of us is right or wrong. I just think we're going with our gut.
But not in terms of the actual annexation. I'm asking you, if it goes through, don't you think it'll cause more anti-Semitism?
Right. So no, I don't think so.
You don't think so?
I don't think so. No. I think there might be a flare up, which happens anytime Israel tries to advocate for herself. But I think it'll ultimately be less anti-Semitism. You might have a quick uptick, but I think it'll plateau fairly quickly, and hopefully, I don't know if when we
because
say
I think there will. I think most of the
anti-Semitic
anti-Semitism that isn't happening in America, especially that's happening in France, and of course in any of the countries in the Middle East, is primary not based on these anti-Semitic tropes that white supremacists might want to hold on to, but it's more based on what's going on with Palestine, the treatment of the Palestinian people.
Yeah, I was in Israel during the Second Intifada in 2001, when 9/11 went down. And I was walking down, I believe it was Ben Yehuda Street, which is like the main stretch there in Jerusalem, when a huge sound went off. It was a suicide bomb. And I walked by, and I saw Jewish body parts splattered all over the streets in blood as medics tried to, like, get whoever was still alive into ambulances as quickly as possible. It's like an image that was burned into my brain forever. It was horrifying. It sickened me. I think I threw up. And then I thought, wow, wait till they report on this. People see what's actually going on here. And I went back to my college dorm and I turned on cable, and the news had spun it against Israel. Like, that's when I stopped trusting the news coverage of Israel. I saw it for myself. They didn't even mention what happened. Anyway, I don't believe, I'm a huge skeptic when it comes to how they report on Israel. I think it's for...
Really?
Yes.
Because I feel that the U.S. media seems to, report in Israel's favor.
Yeah, I don't believe that.
I think that, first of all, I think we're living in an age where no matter what you want to believe, you can find somebody that agrees with you, so you can continue to believe whatever you want to believe. I think that there are a lot of these arguments that start online. People already are so dug into their beliefs. There isn't any real intellectual debate happening. Like you said, if it's okay to disagree, then you have to be able to have discussions where there are parts of it that you agree about, but you at least agree to respect each other's opinions. And these are issues that I don't think there is necessarily a right answer. We have different opinions, so we come to different conclusions. We have different answers for these things, but at the same time, you say that you think we're wrong, but ultimately we're all.
Oh, yeah, that was a bad way to put it.
No. I'm just.
I know. Jonathan, jump in. I actually think what you're saying right now is exactly reflects the sentiments that I was trying to convey. Yeah,
because I think, and I really think that the whole Middle East stuff, the whole Israeli and the two-party system thing, like all that stuff that's happening is it's so complicated, specifically because of how it's reported upon. I think that there are, I don't think that our American media really does a great job. I think I think we spin just about everything. I mean, the fact that we have a Fox News and a CNN and an MSNBC, like the fact that there are more than one place to get your misinformation from, says it all. So I think it's very difficult, but one of the things that Jonathan and I talk about a lot on this show, especially the first year that we did it, where we were going through all of the Torah portions, we talk about how the Jews are marginalized throughout history. And every time we've, found a place of our own, we've been oppressed.
Well, not when it comes to hate.
Yeah, we've been hated upon and marginalized. And as soon as we got our own piece of land, we're turning around and doing the same thing to these people. And I think that there is a way to support Israel while also being able to support human rights and humanity, and being able to, find common ground amongst people that you disagree with.
Absolutely. Yeah, to piggyback off what both you guys are saying, of course, it seems like all media is corrupt, but I feel like Israel's also notorious for spinning things on their own side and for their own benefit. I mean, it just happened this week where a Palestinian was shot and killed by Israeli soldiers, and they're claiming that the guy was trying to, ram into things. And the Palestinians are like, no, he was just on his way to pick up his mom and his sister, preparing for the sister's wedding.
So you don't believe the Jews? You believe? I'm asking you. I'm not.
I mean, I don't know all the facts, but I'm just saying there's two sides to every story. I know the UN has found Israel guilty of war crimes, of killing people, at the borders, Palestinian people, reporters, children. That's something that's largely overlooked by, the rest of the world, because Israel does have the world's sympathies. But like Jordon was saying, at what point does Israel have to start having sympathy for the Palestinian people? And is Israel's, need to keep on, annexing areas in the West Bank going to cause more, problems and less love for Israel, which it already is causing? Belgium wants to recognize now Palestine as a state. Germany saying that if Israel goes through with it, they're going to take some measures against Israel, with a lot of other countries in Europe saying the same thing.
Well, just for a second, Belgium and Germany are two of the most anti-Semitic countries on the planet. Belgium, I think, has a parade, an anti-Jew parade every year now.
Yeah, we've talked about that.
It's not an anti-Jew parade, but there's a lot of anti-Semitic things happening in the
and
parade.
I don't have to explain Germany to you. So I could care less what Germany and Belgium think about the Jews, because I know what Germany and Belgium
But
think
again,
about the
it's
Jews.
not about the Jews. They're saying this about Israel. Like, that's the thing that we like to differentiate, that there's a difference between the state of Israel and a difference between being a Jew.
I understand you're making that differentiation. I don't make it as much. I think Israel is made up of Jews. It's a Jewish state. That's who it is. It's Jews. So I don't disagree with you in terms of human rights. I think first of all, I have to qualify this by saying that I am in no position to comment on the Israel-Palestine situation politically, because I am just as ignorant as anyone else who's not involved.
Well, yeah, I'll just say this. If Jared Kushner can't solve the problems in the Middle East, what chance do we have?
You always come in with the line. Look, I think to go back to what you were saying a minute ago, Jordan, we don't really know. We're watching. Actually, I'll go back to what Jonathan was saying about that story about the person. They said they was trying to ram a car into someone, and they got shot. They said they weren't. I don't know. You don't know. We don't know. We really don't know who's lying, who's telling the truth. I want to always give the benefit of the doubt to the Jewish people, but I also want to be fair, and I want to, I'm a big, I don't want to say I'm a big proponent for human rights, because what did I really ever do, But in my heart, I am, I just don't want to be.
And that's something.
I don't know what you guys do in terms of human rights, if you're out there in tents with the Red Cross or anything, but I always feel like people, I don't like to say it because I haven't gone to Africa.
I put a black square on my Instagram.
Yeah, exactly. So I haven't gone and helped malaria patients. So I'm not going to sit here and lie and say I've been a big proponent for human rights, but my heart is in the right place. I support those who are, So, look, I'm always on the side of what's right. If Israel's doing something wrong and you can show me that, and I'm with you. If it's murky, I'm going to side with Israel, because if I'm going to pick sides, I'm going to pick the side that is my people.
Right.
But when it comes to it's not murky, then my side is the human race people. If it's not murky, then
that's the problem, though.
That there's a human.
The issue of what's going on in Israel, I think, and with the Palestinian people and on the West Bank there, is what makes it murky, because you can point to anti-Semitism and Jew hatred elsewhere and say that's anti-Semitism, and people will be like, yes, let's stamp that out. But then you have this whole other part of the world where you have uncertainty as to who's on the right side here. Are human rights being trampled? Are the Jewish people taking advantage of the fact that they are well armored and have all the guns, and the Palestinian people are still throwing rocks? There's a.
Well, they have rockets too.
Well, I'm just saying. You know what I'm saying.
I think we got to put it. What you saw in Israel, Danny, of course, was horrific. But I think there's a difference between individuals or factions acting up and the state of Israel, doing violence. It's not like there's this Palestinian country that's advocating for this violence that's happening, or that's making this violence happen. When it comes to the guy that was shot, apparently he had autism and he was disabled. I believe those things.
The other thing also is, as complicated as the whole Middle East situation is, I think the fact that there isn't more coverage on these anti-Semitic acts that are happening around the world is troubling. The fact that, Jonathan and I were talking about this before, about how we have this podcast and we look stuff up, but that's how we find it out. Like, it's not on the mainstream news.
Yeah,
Like,
doesn't that drive you nuts? Like, that should drive every Jewish American. Like,
the fact that everybody is standing up and highlighting all the Black Lives Matter stuff and all the racism that's happening and the bigotry in this country, and they're not. It's like the anti-Semitism is an afterthought. It's like an add-on, and also they hated the Jews. It's like
right.
So
now is the time that we're standing with the African American community, and I think one of the problems is that Jews are typically seen as a success. They're typically seen as having control, whether it be of the media, of the banks. So people don't have the amount of sympathy that they have.
Government. Who has control.
But a lot of people don't see it like that.
Yeah, but all you got to do is go on CNN or New York Times and Google China and articles on China. Look it up. Who owns majority shares in Hollywood now? It's China. They're telling the studios what to do. They're pushing communist messaging through the movies. They own a huge amount of media. They spin news. It's done so quietly. It's actually kind of genius, and I almost applaud them for it if I wasn't so, going back to my heart being in the right place for human rights. I'm always outraged that no one stands up for the Chinese people under that regime. But what China figured out, which is brilliant, is that they could have our actors say their words to us and convey their ideologies to us, and we'll buy it because we look up to them. They bought influence in this country, and they did it quietly. And they bought up our debt, and they bought up the banks, and they bought up the media. And they're the ones who are primarily pulling the strings, but nobody talks about it. They'd rather blame the Jews and say the Jews run Hollywood, the Jews run this. They do the same thing with politics. They figured it out with the movies. They figured out that they could put their words. Not the Chinese people. I love the Chinese people, and that's why I'm so passionate about this. But the Chinese government, who are evil, have started putting their words in our actors' mouths. And they started doing the same thing in politics. You don't know when a politician is telling you a Chinese talking point anymore. This is one of the things that infuriates me about Trump. Is just like, he's obviously, I don't need to tell you guys that he's a liar, but he tells people how I don't even
politicians are liars.
Right, but he spends so much time telling his base how anti-China, how tough he's going to be on China. Well, he's cutting deals with China. It's ridiculous.
He personally owes them a shitload of money.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous, and nobody stands up for the Chinese people. But the interesting thing, and I think the Chinese government is really instrumental in this, is that they basically put on the Jews everything they're doing. So it's like the Jews always make a perfect scapegoat. They're like, all right, we got.
You think China's using the Jews as a scapegoat?
Yes, I do. The Chinese government, I think, is behind a lot of the negative. I know
someone who's not getting Chinese food this Christmas.
I feel like we could talk about this all day. I think maybe we should add Danny as a regular correspondent on our show for our conspiracy corner.
Well,
but here's the thing: I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't come up with any of this stuff on my own. I get all this from the New York Times and from CNN. I don't manufacture any of these thoughts. The only thing that I can possibly tell you that is conspiracy is that I believe that China is using the Jews as a scapegoat. But I could everything else I could back up with articles.
Yeah.
Everything else I said. The only thing that because the reason I'm suspicious is because I see factually that they're doing all these things, but then I see like all these white supremacists on like the message boards that I have a perverse curiosity into checking into to see when they're coming for me, and they blame everything that China's doing on the Jews. So that makes me feel like, well, that can't be a coincidence,
Right.
What's the weirdest thing you've heard being blamed on Jews, Danny?
I don't know. A lot of stuff, but I don't have a good enough memory to retain it. I probably don't want to retain it,
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to ever get any less crazy. So
it's nuts.
I really am grateful to know you. I always think that it's important to have people that you have disagreements about that you can still have these discussions with. But I'm also just glad to know somebody like you who's out there, fighting for what you believe in and not taking no for an answer. I've seen that you've gotten into some arguments with people on Facebook, and it maybe has gotten a little heated. But I think that you're putting real information out there, and cooler heads will hopefully prevail.
Yeah, I obviously it's mutual, and I love you guys too. And I said it at the top of the show. I'm happy to know you guys. I love what you're doing with this podcast. We have our differences, but we're both fighting the same fight. So I'm with you.
Yeah, we might not agree on your opinion, but we appreciate you sharing it on the show, Dan.
Is there anything that you want to plug?
I really like the Berkshires. They're beautiful. I don't know if Tanglewood is open because of coronavirus, but if you ever get the chance to go and sit out on the big lawn and listen to the Boston Philharmonic play, it's just a great time, spending time on the lake, painting with watercolors, and enjoying the sweet sounds of John Williams. I recommend it.
Well, that does sound kind of amazing. I'd love to listen to the sweet sounds of John Williams.
I did it once. Let me end on a really funny story because I wasn't funny the whole time. I got really wrapped up in my mess. But this is true. When I was a kid, I went to a John Williams concert on the Great Lawn in Tanglewood with my grandparents. I was a little kid. And in the middle of the concert, John Williams stops and says, there's someone in the audience tonight without whom I wouldn't be up here. This person has been a great friend and a great advocate of mine, and I'd like to invite him to please stand up for a round of applause. And the spotlight goes on me. The spotlight, There's somebody manning a spotlight, and they put it right on me. So I'm like, I look at my grandparents, and they're like, they were looking at me like, no, don't do it, but I had to do it. I stood up, and then there was like a bit of like a muttering of confusion for a second, and then the spotlight operator moved the spotlight a few inches in front of me, and the guy stood up, and it was Steven Spielberg.
Oh, wow.
I was sitting right behind him the whole time.
That's amazing.
I've had some good seats.
Well, listen, I have you have included me on a list of legendary broadcasters and comedians that I don't belong in, but
I think
now that you're talking about lists, you are on social media saying that there's a lot of people that are making lists right now that shouldn't be making these lists, calling out people. Right. Could we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think this cancel culture is very dangerous. This comes back to my concerns about, watching America become like China. I think it's being used, manipulated to shut up people who have a voice. If they say something that's, that someone doesn't like, for instance. As Jordon, I'm not with the Republicans, but I've turned on the Democrats since they turned on the Jews, and this one really set up a red flag for me. I know that Joe Rogan, who, by the way, I'm not even a big fan of Joe Rogan. I went to bat for him on principle, and then everybody's like, "You like Joe Rogan?" No, I'm talking on principle.
Yeah.
So people are having a problem with Joe Rogan now because of his support of comedian Joey Diaz that said something, right? That's the deal?
No. Well, no. He this is what happened. He said something actually fairly mild about Joe Biden. He said, how come nobody's addressing the fact that Joe Biden seems to be in cognitive decline? That's all he said, right? This became a big story for less than 24 hours before all of a sudden a clip from over a decade ago surfaces where he laughs at something that Joey Diaz says, and that totally overshadows the story. So to me, that set up a red flag. It's like, oh, he didn't toe party lines, we need to shut him down. That's Chinese to me. So that's where I get like, I don't believe in this cancel culture. I don't believe in canceling people in general. What are we trying to create? Human corpses, living corpses? You cancel a person? That's not how you build a healthy society. If somebody does something wrong, if it's illegal, you try them, You know, you give them due process. If they go to jail, they go to jail. If it's not illegal, but it's distasteful, as in the case of Joe Rogan, you know, hopefully they learn from it, you know, but the idea of trying to cancel people, you know, saying you're irredeemable, it goes against Jewish values, for one thing. We have a concept of redemption in Judaism. I think we came up with that one.
According to the Jews, we came up with everything.
No, for sure. I mean, what's the statute of limitations on this thing? It's, you know, it's like that they keep wanting to pull up stuff from the past. Like, you know, everybody has a skeleton in their closet. Everybody said something they're not proud of, they're ashamed of. It's one thing to have said something, or you know, 10, 20 years ago, of course, you know, with certain exceptions, and another thing to be like, you know, shouting it out and saying it right now. And it's like, why are we holding so many people, you know, to things that they've done a long time ago? People changed, the times have changed, you know, the climate, the environment, everything has changed. So, I mean, let's give it a break. Like we were talking about this earlier, like where do we draw the line? People aren't drawing the lines with Ford and Disney when it comes to anti-Semitism. They kind of got to slide. But we're going to give Joe Rogan a hard time?
Right. Exactly. That's why I stand up for Joe Rogan on principle, even though I'm not somebody who tunes into his show. And also, I wouldn't make those jokes that Joey Diaz made. I defend his right to make them. You know, I don't make them. It's not my brand of humor. You know me. I try to work pretty clean. You know, I went dirty for a little while when I was younger, and then I said, you know, working clean seems harder. Let me try that. So
I remember
that's my decision.
I remember you used to do a joke about the Holocaust Deniers Museum.
Yeah, I like that one. How come Holocaust deniers don't have a museum, and what would that look like? It's just a big empty building and a German guy standing there when you walk in going, well, look around, there's nothing here.
With animatronic Mel Gibson's and Mel Gibson's dad.
Yeah, man, I forgot about that. I go, stop at the gift shop on the way out and pick up the Anne Frank diary, and the diary just says, hey, you know, everything seems fine, you know, sunny day. But yeah, I mean, the insanity that nobody's calling out, and I'm glad you are, Jonathan, is that they've removed context. And the interesting thing about this hypocrisy is that if we're saying this, then we're assuming humanity's perfect now. Like everything we're saying now is quite perfect, you know, and in 10 years from now, we're not going to look back and be like, oh man, I can't believe that was acceptable.
Right.
That's the nature of reality. That's life. We keep on, you know, me and Jordan have been talking about this a lot too. We keep on moving on from our past, being almost ashamed of our actions, yet doing those actions to other groups of people, other races, just directing kind of like that hate and that anger elsewhere instead of squashing it and getting rid of it.
Well, I understand the sentiment of what you're saying. I think it's a little pessimistic. I think that humanity's definitely gotten a lot better over the years. I think, you know, there were times when the unspeakable things were being done in the Western world, and that's not the case now. I mean, there's still
unspeakable things are still being done, as we saw with like the whole George Floyd thing and mass incarceration, and of course the anti-Semitism that's going on in the States.
Okay, but I'm not good at articulating things sometimes, but let's look slavery in America versus the horrible thing that happened to George Floyd. We can say which is worse, right? I mean, it's
absolutely
not even
slavery is worse. But
slavery's worse.
It's
so
not,
that's
for lack
progress.
of a better term, it's not so black and white, you know, because slavery was just reinvented with the prison system. With the mass incarceration for the African American community. So yes, things have gotten a little bit better, but we still have hatred. There's still hatred towards trans people or gay people or Muslims.
I don't think anybody here is saying that there's no hatred in the world. That's my point, that we still have a lot to work on. So to assume that we've got it all right now, and that everybody should be held to the standard of right now, is obviously a logical fallacy. It assumes that there'll be no more progress, and this is just how it should be, and anything before this is wrong, and anything after this will be just the same as this. You know, I believe in progressivism, I think that's a word, but being a progressive. I think that we should be striving for progress, like to move forward constantly. That doesn't mean looking back, only to learn from it, but not to go back and live in the past. You understand? Like any
You
therapist.
can't know where you're going until you know where you've been.
Right.
I think that's a Will Smith quote,
every
everybody.
therapist will tell you not to live in the past. You can revisit the past to understand the context of where you are now. That's what therapy is. Like, you look back and you say, oh, I started thinking this way because that thing happened to me. Sort of like the story I told you about Israel, when I actually saw the results of a suicide bombing up close and personal. Like, you think that didn't shape my views on Israel and on Palestine? It would be impossible.
Absolutely.
It would be impossible for it not to have, And for me to have seen the news coverage of it and felt so betrayed as a Jew that I just, and another thing, my friend Yoni Jesner, may he rest in peace, from growing up, was one of my best friends, was killed on a suicide bomb on a bus. You think that doesn't shape my passion towards how I look at this? Of course, I'm going to come at this from a very different perspective than, let's say, someone who's not even Jewish and never been to Israel, right?
Right.
So it's like,
For sure.
this is way more personal for me. So these things that happen to us in our life shape the context through which they shape the lens through which we see the world. And if we don't actually go back and look at it, then we don't understand how we got here. I don't understand why I perceive the world the way I do. That doesn't mean I need to live in the past. It doesn't mean I shouldn't be pushing for progress in the future. But it's context. And what we're missing right now in the cancel culture is context. People are not even interested in putting things in context. They look at something, they say, how would that play right now? Not good. Cancel them.
Right.
That was 10 years ago. Do you think that Joe Rogan hasn't grown as a person, going on the air, talking to different people every single day in 10 years?
Absolutely, Danny. We disagreed a lot today on what we were talking about, but I'm happy we could end the podcast on something that we agree on. And we really value your perspective. We really appreciate you being on the show, you being a friend of the show, and we look forward to having you back soon, Danny.
Look forward to it anytime, guys. Keep doing what you're doing. I love you guys.
Yeah, back at you, buddy.
Danny.
Send our love to Kylie and to Sophie.
All right. What about the dogs? You don't like my dogs?
And, you can send some love to the dog, too.
What about the chickens?
Fuck those chickens.
What about my tortoises? All right, I love you guys.
All right, bye, Danny. Oh, yeah, another one in the books.
Thanks for tuning in to our not-so-sexy 69th episode. Of course, check us out on social media, at American Jew Podcast, pretty much across the board. We're, on Facebook. You could email us at americanjewpodcast@gmail.com. If there's something we talk about that you like, you have an opinion on, something you think we should talk about, if there's a guest that you think we should have on the show, check me out on all social media at Jonathan Randall.
And you can find me on Instagram at BeatnikNudnik. Oh, boy.
Stay safe and healthy out there.
Yeah. Shalom.